It's wonderful to be back again with all of you. I have spoken recently about the practice being constant and complete. If we are practicing properly, naturally, over time, the practice is no longer just something that we go into and then out of. Rather, it comes to be constant, the way that we are, not just something that we do for a period of time. The practice also, if it is done correctly, comes to be complete. This does not mean formally perfect, but rather it comes to include everything. Constant in terms of time and complete as a totality. If you are practicing properly, this is what happens. But this can still be a bit abstract, perhaps, and difficult to work in your actual practice. So I would like to bring it closer to home, so to speak, in terms of concentration or focus or attention in our practice. Often people getting settled in the practice have difficulty in keeping the mind focused, locked in, so to speak. The mind wanders off again and again. How can we apply ourselves so that the practice is truly concentrated? Needless to say, this is intimately connected with the practice being constant and complete. But in terms of concentration, it may be easier to grasp and work with. First of all, the concentration necessary for Zen practice is not quite the same as ordinary concentration, where you may be concentrated on one thing, and then for the Zen practice, you turn your attention to something else. For example, your breath, or a koan, or the sitting itself, or the concentration itself. Zen concentration is not that kind of a thing, turning attention from A to B. Rather, the concentration necessary for Zen practice is something that comes from the ground itself, so to speak. It comes from the ground that we walk on. It's not a particular focus. Yes, it can be in terms of a process of the practice, of course, to bring our attention back again and again, for example, to the breath and away from the wandering thoughts. But the real concentration, when the practice is working, it comes to be grounded. It absorbs us. It's not just a willful effort of bringing my mind to attention on one thing. Rather, that total concentration engulfs us in a good way. This is why something like the sitting itself or a koan is what it is. It's not just focusing on zazen in the ordinary sense, nor is it now my mind was wandering, but I'm going to focus on my koan, mu, 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 mu. This has nothing to do with it. This is just conscious deliberation. The mu, if you like, or the zazen, if you like, has got to come from the ground itself and absorb us in a sense. This is the concentration necessary for Zen practice. Otherwise, it's just a matter of taking the mind where it's focusing on one thing, and then you take it on something else, and then, it starts to wander away, and you bring it back, and it starts to wander away, and you bring it back. It's mental masturbation. So you have to see for yourself, through your practice, the fundamental difference between this kind of attention on something, willful attention, and the concentration that, so to speak, comes from the ground itself. In a literal sense, it is prior to our conscious attention. Once you have connected with that, the practice really takes a turn. Then it becomes possible to do what you read about in the books. No matter what I do, I found myself sitting amidst the koan. The koan itself was eating, was drinking, was walking, was lying down to rest. This is not just, poetic language. That is the way it must become. And you can't do that by simply consciously willing it, bringing your self-attention to it. It's got to be something that you open up to in a very literal sense. This Zen concentration is something that is always already there. It's not a state that you create and then lose again and then try and create again and get back to, and so on. It has to be something much more fundamental. And once you touch that, you know. Then the whole problem with trying to get back to some state or trying to attain some state is more or less resolved, because you realize rather than going towards it, it may not be formally perfect, that's fine, but you are now coming from it. And then it's just a matter of continuing on to the end. In a sense, that concentration, real concentrated, shows you the way to go in the practice. Once again, I spoke before about practice being constant and about it being complete. This is just another way of saying the same thing in terms of our actual attitude in Zen practice, what we call the focus or our attention, this concentration. You might say a natural samadhi, concentrated oneness. It's there. yes, in a sense, we need to work on it, to refine it, and to deepen it. But the point is, when you've done that, it becomes clear. It's not simply something that you are producing. No, it's something much more fundamental than that. It's something that you can't really lose. I urge you in your practice not just to sit and dawdle and go into states of mind and willfully bring your consciousness back. It's endless. You've got to get to the point where this fundamental concentration that engulfs you arises naturally. It's there. It's there. Let it come. Stop manipulating it and turning it into some thought about something. That's about as clear as I can make it. Now I leave it up to you. You have got to confirm this for yourself in your own experience. Please, I urge you, do not waste your time sitting there dreaming on your cushion. Thank you for listening so intently.